Things seem to be going pretty well for old Spider-Man these days. He had the top grossing movie of last year, and it's the top grossing superhero movie of all time, with Spider-Man No Way Home surpassing even Avengers Endgame in profits. He also had his comic book relaunched recently with a brand new number one and a top tier creative team. So given all this good fortune, why do I have the sinking feeling that all of this good news for Spider-Man is about to come to a very abrupt end? Well, let's take just a minute and look on the right. Recover, edit. Things seem to be going pretty well for old Spider-Man these days. He had the top grossing movie of last year, not to mention he's got the top grossing superhero movie of all time, with Spider-Man No Way Home surpassing even Avengers Endgame. He also has had his comic series relaunched with a brand new number one and a top tier creative team behind it. So why, with all this good fortune, do I still have this sinking feeling that the good times for Spider-Man are about to come to an abrupt and unceremonious end? Well, let's take a minute and examine the writing on the wall. Remember that new number one I told you about? Well, it promised a new status quo for Spider-Man. It certainly delivered, making Spider-Man somewhat of a pariah in the Marvel Universe, with pretty much everybody cutting ties and disassociating with him, even his personal relationships, Aunt May and MJ, severely damaged. And speaking of MJ, the free comic book day offerings tease that MJ may be in for an unceremonious and very grim end at the hands of the T-1000, aka Moira McTaggart, also tying the Spider-Man books to the putrid X-Men comics. And if any comic fan knows anything, one way to piss off a Spider-Man fan is to mess with MJ, especially to mess with MJ and Peter's relationship. So that being said, that also comes on the heels of them announcing the end of the Spider-Verse. And the Spider-Verse has been a cash cow and basically a new character generating machine for Marvel for the last 10 or so years. And this news comes on the heels of the release of the sequel to the Into the Spider-Verse movie, which was a huge success for Spider-Man, and especially Miles Morales, and brought a ton of new Spider characters into the big screen. So all of this seems to lead me to believe that the old ugly head of the Who Owns Spider-Man feud has come back to haunt us. So for those of you who don't know, Spider-Man's movie rights are owned by Sony, not by Marvel or Disney. And over the last few years, Marvel and Disney and Sony have kind of had this agreement that they get to share custody of Spider-Man, like a kid in a divorced couple's lives. And Spider-Man gets to go play around in the MCU, and Sony gets to keep the distribution rights, and they somehow get to split the money, and that's been working pretty well. But that deal ended with the last Spider-Man movie. And if there's one thing that we know, it's that Disney is willing to play the long game when it comes to their strategy of sabotaging their own IP to devalue it enough that whoever owns it will sell it back to them. So we need to look no further than the Fantastic Four. Now, the Fantastic Four, for many, many years, had their rights owned by Fox, which meant Fox was the only ones that could produce Fantastic Four movies or any other kind of content. As a result, in the comics, the Fantastic Four, once the MCU once the Marvel Pictures started making movies, kind of got put onto the back burner. For the longest time, they just were pretty irrelevant, till ultimately they just created a Secret Wars event which pushed the Fantastic Four completely out of the Marvel Universe and put them in their own dimension. And for the longest time, there just was no Fantastic Four in Marvel Comics. And then all of a sudden, Marvel ponies up the money, they're able to buy Fox and get the Fantastic Four back into their custody, and then lo and behold, Fantastic Four pops up in the MCU. They're in the Doctor Strange movie, where they've got a brand new comic, also with a top-tier creative team, and you've got the Fantastic Four movie is supposedly the last installment of the lackluster Marvel Phase 4. So as you can see, their plan worked in this case. Now, I don't like this way of doing things. I don't like the fact that these were deals that were made in good faith back in the day before Disney owned Marvel, and now Disney has bought Marvel, and they're trying to change the rules of the deals that were in place when they bought the company. This, in my opinion, is not a great way to do business, and I really don't like the fact that they do this at the expense of their own characters and the expense of their own fans. And they did this even with the X-Men books back in the day when the X-Men were owned by Fox. They kind of shunted them off to their own little corner of the universe. Creators weren't allowed to create new characters for the X-Men because they didn't want to give the X-Men's current owners anything else to become the next big movie property. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. I mean, Disney owns Marvel. Disney's in the business of making movies and making content. And if you are making Spider-Man comics and Sony owns Spider-Man, is making the Spider-Man movies, you're basically doing advertising work for a rival. But there's a second side of that too. As long as Sony's putting out good content, it's still good word of mouth for your Spider-Man. You still own the rest of Spider-Man. They're still giving you something in return. There's still value there. But it's still very lopsided, obviously. The movies are where the money is. So I understand Disney's motivation in doing it. It just sucks that they do it. I don't know any other way to say it. And this is just my opinion. I could be very, very wrong. They may have really great plans for Spider-Man. They're going to keep him good and golden. He is their top-selling comic at the moment, as of right now. And honestly, I believe their second top-selling comic is Venom. So Sony owns the rights to that as well. It just seems like, as somebody who's seen this pattern emerge before, that same writing, or in this case webbing, is all over the wall that Spider-Man's getting ready to get kneecapped a little bit, so that maybe, just maybe, Sony might lose a little bit of the luster of owning Spider-Man and consider giving it back to Disney Marvel so they can reintegrate Spider-Man back into the MCU as one big happy comic continuity family. I could be wrong, but I want to know what you think. So let's talk about it in the comments below. While you're down there, do the usual stuff. Like, subscribe, share this video would be great. The new YouTube system algorithm really prefers shares over likes these days. Probably because they got rid of the dislike button from what I understand, but help the channel grow a lot if you could share this video and just leave a comment below. I really like to hear what you guys think, and I like interacting with you guys, and I love to see this community grow. We're getting a lot of fun conversations going on these videos. I just like to keep it going. So I appreciate all you guys' support, and I will talk to you in the next video. See you then. Bye.